It was one of the most competitive, entertaining, and controversial MVP finishes in NBA history. The players that are voted in the top 5 had all-time great seasons. We're going to discuss the regular season performances of Dominique Wilkins, Patrick Ewing, Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Charles Barkley. We're going to start with the 5th place and finish with the MVP winner. Make sure to comment on your take on who was the most deserving. Dominique Wilkins achieved the impossible. It is simply common knowledge that you don't get better at your craft at 33 years old if you are in the NBA. It takes an incredibly special player to do so. It was even more unlikely with the lack of technological and medical advantages that the players of today have. But when you suffer a ruptured Achilles tendon at the age of 32, that is considered a death sentence. You are never going to come back the same. Especially when it happens to a player that was as athletically gifted as Dominique was. Everything seemed easy to him because he was bigger, faster, stronger, and could jump higher than anyone else. Now he had to get his points the hard way. He'd be lucky if he had a few vintage performances here and there, but that's all you could realistically expect. Except the exact opposite happened. He not only sustained his normal production, but he improved from the previous year. Let's go back to January 28th of 1992. The Atlanta Hawks were hosting the Philadelphia 76ers. Dominique was only 25 points away from reaching 20,000 career points. But in the second quarter, he experienced the worst sensation an athlete can go through. He heard a pop in his right Achilles tendon, and he knew it was over. He even mentioned to reporters afterwards that the first thing on his mind was that the season was over and he started thinking about next year. That's how inevitable the situation was. And for many NBA experts, this was the unofficial end of the Dominique Wilkins era of the Atlanta Hawks. After his injury, the Hawks finished the season going 15-24. They missed the playoffs and had their first losing record in 6 years. There's no question that this team missed everything that he brings to the table. In the following season, there were no high hopes for this team. If you were reading what some of the league experts were saying at the time, they were fully expecting this team to finish near the bottom of the standings. Jack McCallum spoke for everyone when he said this for Sports Illustrated in 1993, quote, "No one could imagine Wilkins, aka the human highlight film, returning to the Atlanta Hawks lineup as a hobbling outside shooter or as a post-up player without a set of springs." End of quote. His play was supposed to take a hit, which would have resulted in another disappointing year. During this time, it was supposedly common knowledge that Wilkins was only great because of his physical gifts. If you take that away, then his weaknesses would be showcased even more so for the world to see. However, he proved everyone wrong in the most emphatic way. Check out what he accomplished in the 1992-93 season. He averaged 29.9 points on nearly 47% shooting, 6.8 rebounds, and 3.2 assists per game. He produced the 3rd highest scoring mark in his career, and he ended up being the 2nd leading scorer in the league. But now let's look at it from a historical perspective. He produced the 2nd highest points per game average out of any player 33 years of age or older. The player that's first on that list is LeBron James when he averaged 30.3 points per game in the 2021-22 season. It should be noted that he only played a total of 56 games that year. Wilkins, on the other hand, played 71 games. Continuing on his scoring output, there were 8 games where he scored over 40 points. His season high came against the Portland Trail Blazers when he scored 48 points on 55% shooting. Another game worth mentioning is when he scored 45 points on 64% shooting in just 32 minutes of play against the Minnesota Timberwolves. A 50-point game was well within his reach. He also became a much more proficient shooter from the perimeter, as he averaged 38% from the 3 on 4.5 attempts per game. There was even a game against the Milwaukee Bucks when he made 8 3-pointers. Wilkins also took strides in other aspects of the game that helped clean up the reputation that he had among some of the NBA media members. For example, Michael Wilbon wrote this about Wilkins for the Washington Post in 1993. Quote, "He's playing perhaps the best defense of his career, and he has been the bedrock of what used to be a fractured Hawks locker room." End of quote. The coach of the Hawks, Lenny Wilkins, tried extremely hard for this team to be more defensive oriented. It worked at first, and then they went back to being a below average defensive team. However, Dominique seemed to exert more energy on defense, which was something that he wasn't too concerned about doing earlier in his career. His example and presence in that locker room had such a galvanizing effect on a team that was flawed in many ways. That allowed the Atlanta Hawks to reach the postseason after a disappointing end to their season the prior year. To everyone's amazement, he was better in every way. The reality is that you don't come back from a ruptured Achilles tendon without being a fanatic worker. Anyone that's accused him of being lazy has been quieted for the rest of time. There's no other way to describe him after coming back from that and getting better after 11 years in the league. To have a better idea of how he's able to accomplish this amazing feat, here's how he described his process according to the Knucklehead podcast.
I heard all the critics say, oh, he's probably done it at that age, and if you come back and be like a has-been, and I heard all the negative. I had all them articles on my gym wall. And I remember the doctor that did my surgery came out of retirement to do my surgery at the Houston clinic. And he said, you're going to come back. You're going to be better than ever. And I would say that to people, I'll be back, and they'll give me that sarcastic pat on the back. Yeah, good luck. Right. But I worked twice a day, every day for 9 months. I was determined not just to come back, to be better than I was before I left.
And there's no question that he was better. He will forever be the golden standard for players who are looking to successfully combat the fight of their careers. New York Knicks basketball was back. After 7 years of building and rebuilding a team around Patrick Ewing, they finally had a squad that could contend for a championship. They emerged as one of the title favorites, and Patrick Ewing was a big reason why. He led the charge on both ends of the floor. But for this season, it was his defensive impact that allowed the Knicks to have so much success. They played a bruising and physical style that turned every game into a cage fight. They treated flagrant fouls as parking tickets. It was a small price to pay to send a message to anyone that was brave enough to drive down the middle. It wasn't the brand of basketball that the NBA was fishing for, but you couldn't deny the results. They led the league in defensive rating, opponents' points per game, and opponents' field goal percentage. Players like Anthony Mason and Charles Oakley played a big role in those numbers. Their toughness and versatility gave teams so many problems to score on the low block. We also don't want to forget all the great perimeter defenders they had. Doc Rivers, John Starks, and Greg Anthony made it so difficult for players to create easy shots. That also includes Michael Jordan. For the 3 games he played against them in the regular season, he averaged a combined 26.7 points per game on 33% shooting. This was truly one of the greatest defensive teams in NBA history, and there are so many players that deserve recognition. But the player that was mostly responsible for their defensive excellence was Patrick Ewing. He earned an 8.1 defensive win shares. That is not only the 19th highest in league history, but it's also the 3rd highest mark since the merger. He was the ultimate guard dog. He was an expert at deterring shots and not allowing hardly any second chance opportunities. In fact, he produced a career high in rebounds per game. His menacing presence was a key to their success, but he was also more than capable of carrying his team on offense. It's all in the numbers. He averaged 24.2 points on 50% shooting, 12.1 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game. One game that illustrates perfectly how impactful he was came against the Philadelphia 76ers. He had 26 points on 46% shooting, 24 rebounds, 5 blocks, and 3 assists. But then there were nights where he looked like the MVP. Take for example what he did against Alonzo Mourning in the Charlotte Hornets.
By Charles, it was a tough shot by Johnson.
Ewing with the reverse stuff. Game tied at 21. Here's Ewing with the hook shot. Yes. Smith up front. Ewing with the drop step. Beautiful move.
As they look for Ewing inside more and more.
Here is Ewing. Yes. In the game. Starks for Ewing, who beat Mourning.
He finished with the monster stat line of 43 points on 63% shooting, 12 rebounds, 3 blocks, and 2 assists. We also don't want to dismiss what his running mate, John Starks, did. He added 39 points on 62% shooting, 13 assists, and 5 rebounds. When their offense was clicking like that, they were unstoppable. The combination of his all-time great defensive season, along with his versatile offensive game, allowed the New York Knicks to win 60 games. That is only the second time that they've been able to win that many games. That is also tied for the best record in franchise history. They had the same record as the legendary 1970 Knicks. Patrick has been criticized for many shortcomings throughout his playing career, but he deserves plenty of recognition for the way he led this team to one of his best seasons in their storied franchise. Let's also keep in mind that the Knicks didn't have any other player that made the All-Star team. Although they had plenty of capable players that contributed to their success, Ewing always seemed to be New York's one constant. All those factors gave him a very compelling argument to be named the MVP. It was a race for the ages, but Patrick ended up finishing in a distant 4th place. There was just something that he was lacking that the other 3 players had. William Roden of the New York Times summed it up well in his article in 1993. There were compelling arguments for each player. Jordan won his 7th scoring title, Barkley transformed Phoenix, Olajuwon carried Houston, and Ewing is the Knicks' foundation. End of quote. Should that ever be the way we describe the MVP of the league? Someone who is the foundation of a team. The numbers indicate that Michael, Hakeem, and Charles had transcendent seasons, but Patrick was simply the best player on the best team in the Eastern Conference. His defensive value was all-time great. However, some critics believe that he was holding his team back from having a championship-worthy offense. According to the numbers, the Knicks had the 3rd worst points per game average and the 5th worst offensive rating in the league. They had the tendency of throwing the ball to him too much, and that made their offense predictable. They added players Orlando Blackman and Charles Smith, hoping to add some firepower to their offense, but nothing changed. Despite all of that, Patrick got some love from a few media members, and he received 4 first-place votes. It's mind-boggling to me that some people actually believe he deserved the MVP, especially with the type of competition that he was facing. But I sorta kinda see their point of view. The Knicks were lacking a championship caliber point guard. They didn't have a go-to guy that could close out games. They didn't have a firepower offense, and Patrick didn't have that one co-star that all great players need to win a title. And yet, the Knicks were still the favorites to come out of the East in the playoffs. They had a legitimate shot at bringing a championship to the city of New York, and there was only one player that was responsible for that. What is the narrative that surrounds Michael Jordan in the 1992-93 season? Is that he had an off year. They make this ridiculous statement because the Chicago Bulls finished with 10 fewer victories than the previous year. That is the reason why he finished 3rd in the MVP race. The New York Times admitted this when they wrote, "Indeed, it's difficult to vote against Michael Jordan in anything. In the evolutionary chain of pro basketball players, Jordan is the greatest. He carried championship-starved Chicago to the last 2 championships. But Jordan's greatness may have been a liability in this season's MVP voting. Merely doing this spectacular is no longer sufficient. If the NBA's MVP is a person who pulls a team to unprecedented heights, Jordan's challenge was more imposing than that of the others this season, and he didn't really succeed. The Bulls finished 2nd in the East. Barkley's one-season transformation was more dramatic." End of quote. There were no doubts that he was the best player in the world, but the Bulls' underachieving after having a historically great season in 1992 was held against him. But let's get one thing clear. He had little to do with the struggles that the team was having. For example, let's take a look at the numbers from Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant in 1992 and 1993. As you can see, their numbers dropped in nearly all the statistical categories. The same can be said for nearly all the rest of the players on the team except for BJ Armstrong. It wasn't that Jordan was having an off year, it was 83% of the entire roster. In Michael's case, he saw an increase in scoring, rebounds, and steals. He also took 3 more shot attempts per game. It was the 2nd most field goal attempts that he averaged for his career. This was a reflection of some of the offensive struggles that the Bulls were going through. Their half-court offense wasn't running as smoothly, and they became too stagnant. This was by design. Phil Jackson wanted to slow down the pace in order to save their legs for the postseason. In fact, they finished with the slowest pace in the league. Some of their struggles had to do with fatigue from winning 2 straight titles, while some of it had to do with lack of depth from their bench play. Therefore, they became too reliant on MJ to bail them out when nobody else had it going. He took the shots that were given to him, but they weren't always in the flow of the offense. Despite all of that, he still nearly shot over 50% from the field. If he's going to make half of the shots he puts up, I can see why they would just give him the ball and let him go to work. That was especially the case with the type of scoring performances he had. There was a game against Orlando Magic where he posted 64 points on 55% shooting, 6 rebounds, and 5 steals. Since it came in a loss, Jordan mentioned that it didn't mean anything. There were 3 other games where he scored over 50 points and 10 additional games where he scored over 40. His next best performance came against the Washington Bullets. In the previous game against Miami, Jordan missed his first 11 shots and was limited to 3 points in 3 quarters. He would never allow himself to be bad 2 games in a row, so he proceeded to do this.
He knew that Chapman had the ball. Michael with 3. Yeah, oh, Mike.
Is he back?
Yeah, big time.
Jordan fakes it. Harvey Grant on him now. High, Archer, good! Against Overton. Michael goes by him, fades, fires!
Yes! Got it, he's fouled. MJ shooting for 50.
Last 6 has 10. Jordan fakes. Oh, spins the other way! They're on their feet. He'll fire another 3.
Oh, yeah! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 for 57.
He torched the Bullets for 57 points on 60% shooting. He went 6 of 8 from the 3, and he dished out 10 assists. Then we have a couple of games where he proved that he was still the best two-way player in the league. He had the stat line of 40 points on 67% shooting, 9 steals, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists against the New Jersey Nets. Pay no mind that he nearly had a quadruple-double, but he nearly became the only player in history to post 40 points and 10 steals in a game. Then there was the game against the Sixers where he had 8 steals in just 27 minutes of play. If he played his normal minutes, there's no question he could have had the all-time steals record. His per-game averages are also something that we just can't bypass. There have only been 3 times where a player has been able to average over 32 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2.5 steals per game. Oh, and by the way, he's the only player to have ever done this. Ironically, he was snubbed from the MVP in all 3 of those seasons. But here's more proof that he was absolutely the most deserving of winning the MVP. He finished first in scoring, steals, win shares, offensive win shares per 48 minutes, value over placement player rating, box plus minus, offensive box plus minus, and PER. That is a total of 9 categories. If that's not enough, he posted the 10th highest value over placement player rating and the 18th highest box plus minus and offensive box plus minus for a single season ever. By all calculations, this was an all-time great regular season. It was as Phil Jackson mentioned to reporters, Michael is definitely the league's most valuable player. Any vote that goes against him is just saying, let's give it to someone else. End of quote. He was right on the money. There was simply no one that was at his level, and he proved that in a demonstrative way in the playoffs. The narrative was that the Bulls had fallen off and they were no longer unbeatable, yet they finished with the 3rd best record in the league. Don't let that fool you into believing that Jordan had fallen off. If anything, the main reason why they were still in title contention was because of his unwillingness to take his foot off the gas. When it comes to Hakeem's legendary career, 3 seasons are usually mentioned. There's 1986 when the Rockets reached the finals, and the 2 seasons that he won the title. That's 1994 and 1995. As iconic as those seasons were, his 1993 campaign gets overlooked way too often. The numbers even say that he never had a better regular season, even better than his 1994 MVP season. Let's first start with a statistical argument for him. He averaged 26.1 points on 53% shooting, 13 rebounds, 4.2 blocks, and 3.5 assists per game. The numbers that he posted are something that we shouldn't take lightly. There have only been 3 times in history that a player has averaged over 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 blocks in a season. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in his 1975-76 MVP season and Patrick Ewing in the 1989-90 season were the only times that has been accomplished. He also posted career highs in many of the advanced metrics. He recorded the highest offensive rating, win shares, offensive win shares per 48 minutes, value over replacement player rating, box plus minus, offensive box plus minus, true shooting percentage, and PER of his career. One of the 5 greatest centers of all time was in peak form, and he broke many records. He recorded the 9th most blocks for a single season, along with the 12th highest blocks per game average ever. He also posted the 6th highest defensive win shares for a single season since the NBA/ABA merger. He had a historically great defensive season, and that is why he won the first Defensive Player of the Year award of his career. On top of that, he finished 4th in scoring. It's no wonder why Sacramento Kings center Wayman Tisdale said this to Sports Illustrated about Olajuwon that season. Quote, "Nobody in the league dominates the game on both ends of the floor like Hakeem." End of quote. There were plenty of instances where he completely dominated his opponents. For example, he scored a season high of 45 points on 53% shooting, along with 14 rebounds, 4 steals, and 2 blocks against David Robinson and the San Antonio Spurs. There was a game against the Blazers when he had 40 points on 73% shooting, 10 blocks, 9 rebounds, and 3 assists. That is only the 3rd time in NBA history that a player has recorded over 40 points and 10 blocks in a game. He was carrying his team each and every game, and the Rockets turned into one of the top teams in the league. They won 55 games. He was getting so much recognition for the way he turned that franchise around. They went from winning 42 games and missing the playoffs the previous year to being tied for the 2nd best record in the West. They went from being 20th in offensive rating and 10th in defensive rating to the 6th best offensive rating and 3rd best defensive rating. It's no wonder he finished 2nd in MVP voting, and he even finished ahead of Michael Jordan. Who was the sole reason for their amazing turnaround season? The answer couldn't be more obvious. Keep in mind that there was no one else who averaged over 14 points or 10 rebounds per game. They also didn't make any big trades, and they didn't make any big acquisitions through free agency. Their biggest offseason move was drafting Robert Horry. This was basically the same team from the previous year. The only difference is that Hakeem took his game to a level that we've rarely seen from a big man. In order to reach that level, he needed to make changes to his approach and mentality. He showed a willingness to pass the ball more thanks to his newfound trust in his teammates. His improved ability to pass the ball lessened the number of double and triple teams he faced, which in turn gave him more room to score. This was the beginning of his transformation that eventually turned him into a champion. And it's crazy, the Rockets were so close to never seeing this happen. The feeling around the league was that he was going to get traded prior to the start of this season. He was unhappy with his contract situation, and the Rockets claimed that he was faking an injury in order to renegotiate his contract. This led to the team suspending him, and Hakeem vented his frustrations publicly with the media. He seemed fed up with the team, and rightfully so. They failed to surround him with a strong supporting cast for years after they traded away Ralph Sampson in the middle of the 1987/88 season. No one would have blamed him if he decided to look elsewhere to compete for a title. Instead of doing everything possible to force his way out of Houston, he eventually made his peace with owner Charlie Thomas. That decision to stay put was a wise one, and we saw what he was able to accomplish with this team in the following years. 1992 was the summer of Charles Barkley. He left a terrible situation in Philadelphia and played for the greatest team ever assembled in the history of team sports. Then he went on a team that was one piece away from becoming title favorites. He transformed Phoenix into a team that is highly regarded as one of the greatest teams to have never won a championship. The impact that he brought to the Suns was instantaneous. They skipped the adjustment period, and Charles learned how to play with his new teammates right away. After only 11 games, they went on a 14-game winning streak, and they never lost momentum. The credit goes to Charles for fitting in so seamlessly with the identity of this team. For example, Jazz coach Jerry Sloan made this observation after one of the regular season matchups. Barkley's skills just fit into what they're trying to do in Phoenix. that didn't have to change a lot of things because of his style of play. His ability just blended in when he came there to play." End of quote. Charles admitted that he had better seasons during his time with the Sixers, that the only difference is that he was now playing with a winner. He mentioned this specifically after winning the MVP award. "It's definitely been an incredible year. If you check my statistics, they're about the same as they've been for the past 8 years, so it must be my teammates who made us win. This award should go to them." End of quote. He was right. He had 3 other seasons where he averaged more points and 5 other seasons where he averaged more rebounds. However, he did average a career high in assists per game. We can say for certain that he made his teammates better, that he could be the best player on a potential championship winning team. When point guard Kevin Johnson went down with an injury and missed 32 games, it was Charles that became their main playmaker. They had to slow it down a little bit more without their speedy point guard, and they ran the offense through him. He did an exceptional job of getting others involved and knowing when to take over games. In the end, he had one of the greatest all-around seasons by a big man. He is currently only the 5th power forward/center to average over 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists per game for a season. He also ended up with 6 triple-doubles in 2 games where he had over 30 points and 20 rebounds. His best performance came against the Los Angeles Clippers, where he recorded 37 points on 69% shooting, 21 rebounds, and 8 assists. It perfectly illustrates what made him such a legendary player. He remains one of the most efficient scorers in league history. He was unstoppable on the low block, he ran the floor hard, and he could stretch the floor with his outside shooting. Even while being an undersized power forward, he still found a way to win nearly every battle for the rebound. And what people always forget about him was how unselfish he was. He was a fantastic facilitator. He was perfect for a team that had so many weapons. For many basketball experts, what they were missing was toughness. That's where he truly pushed them to a level of greatness that nobody envisioned them having. Take for example their battle that they had against the New York Knicks. This was considered a potential finals preview. Would this finesse team get pushed around by the big bullies in New York? This is when he proceeded to do this.
Vision is tough for a team that's not used to it. See all those white shirts?
Oh, it counts! And the foul! And they have lost 2. Here's the post-up move by Barkley. This time Barkley played very well by Oak. It counts and the foul. He was just upset. Frank Johnson with the steal. Marley for Barkley. It counts and the foul. Rivers. Oh, Johnson and Rivers in a collision. Oh, look out. Here comes Rivers after Johnson. We have a free-for-all. Johnson blindsided Rivers. Rivers went down, and this could become ugly.
It is ugly.
I'm sure many of the Phoenix Suns fans were happy to see that toughness, that they weren't willing to back down. The Suns ended up winning that game by 29 points. Charles had 31 points on 55% shooting, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists. No team was safe from receiving this kind of beatdown. For the season, they won 62 games. They finished first in points per game and offensive rating. He was the face of one of the top offensive teams of the 90s. Over 30 years later, and we all still talk about the 93 Suns very often. That's not something that we do for many non-title teams. He must have done something right if this season has been that memorable to us. He wouldn't have been my choice, but I can see why he won the MVP. But what about you all? Who would you have voted for that season? Do you think they got the top 5 players right? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.